Truong Chai, the ugly boatman. Now, Truong Chai was certainly the ugliest man you've ever seen. He was so ugly that if a baby saw Truong Chai, he or she would cry. That's how ugly he was. But there was something beautiful about Truong Chai. The way he played his metal flute. You see, Truong Chai was a fisherman. He worked all day from sunrise until almost sunset, fishing. He was a very poor man. But at the end of the day, after his work was done, he would get into his sandpan. Do you know what a sandpan is? A sandpan is an Asian boat. Now, a sandpan can be as large as a sailing vessel. Well, with a mast as tall as that. Or it could be the size of a canoe. You know what a canoe is? Well, Truong Chai, his canoe had a little tarpaulin in the middle, made of banana leaves. And that kept the rain off of his head. That was his home, where he lived, where he slept, where he ate when he was not fishing. Well, at the end of each day, after his fishing, he would get into his sampan and he'd row, and it only had one oar in the back, and he'd row upriver to a quiet spot in the river where the river was wide. And he'd turn his boat around and he'd float down the river and he'd play his flute. And he'd play so beautifully that the notes would echo into the mountains, and it would sound not like one flute, but like a whole orchestra. Well, when Truong Chai played his music, everyone in the village would stop what they are doing and they would listen. But there was one person who loved Truong Chai's music more than anyone else. That was the mandarin's daughter. Do you know what a mandarin is? A mandarin is the wealthy man of the village. The mandarin owned a palace up in the mountains. He was so rich that his children never came down into the village. And the oldest of his daughters loved Truong Chai's music so much, she would go out onto her patio and she'd listen. When she was younger, she used to pretend that Truong Chai was not ugly. He could not be so ugly, with him able to play music so beautifully. And she daydreamed, she pretended he was not ugly at all, but that he was a handsome prince, and that one day they would be married. Now, did she believe this fantasy? Absolutely not. He was nothing but a peasant, but it was fun. And the father, the mandarin, he didn't mind her daydreaming until she got to the age of marriage. She refused the hand of every man that came to ask for her hand. No, 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 no. His eyes are not slanted enough, she said to one. Oh, no, 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 he can't even use his chopsticks. I can't marry him. And, oh, absolutely not. I cannot marry him. He has a big butt. Well, eventually the father got very upset. The mandarin, he got very upset. He said, "Daughter, what are you waiting for? Choose one of these men. They are very rich. If you do not choose, I will choose for you." Well, she didn't like that idea at all. She said, "Father, I'd rather marry Truong Chai." Well, did she mean it? No, she was only upset. Did the father think she meant it? Absolutely. He was so upset, he grabbed her by the hand, by the wrist, dragged her into her room, threw her into her bed, said, "You shall never listen to Truong Chai's music ever again." Just like your parents might say, "No more rock and roll." He slammed the shutter doors. He walked out of the room and slammed the door to her room. Her father had never treated her so badly, and she was determined to punish him. She crawled into her bed. She took her blanket. She took it right up to her throat, and she refused to eat or drink anything. That night, her food was brought. She pushed it away. The next day, 3 meals pushed away, both food and drink. On the third day, it wasn't so easy. She was getting very weak. By the time the third meal came, she could hardly move her hand. And she just took her blanket to her throat. She closed her eyes and said, "Take it away. Take it away." Her father, the mandarin, he was afraid that she might die. "What am I going to do? What am I going to do?" Well, his wife knew what to do. "You go down and you get Truong Chai. You bring Truong Chai up here. You have him play his music and your daughter will live. If you do not, she will die." Well, the mandarin did not like his wife to be right, but she was. And so he went down to the village. He went to Truong Chai in his sampan. He said, "Truong Chai, you bring your flute. You shall come with me." And so Truong Chai, being nothing but a fisherman, a peasant, he took his flute to his heart, and he slowly followed the mandarin all the way up the mountain. Now, villagers, they had never been invited to the mansion. They all followed. Every man, woman, and child. The whole village followed him. Truong Chai was welcomed into the front door of the house. He was welcomed into the young woman's bedroom. The whole family was there. The mandarins, all of the mandarins' children, their cousins, their aunts and uncles, grandmas and grandpas on both sides, the mandarin and his wife. And there lay the mandarin's daughter, her face as white as death. "Come, play your music, bring my daughter back to me." Well, Truong Chai stepped forward. He looked down at the face. Her hair looked like a black shroud of death. And yet her flesh was the most beautiful face he had ever seen. And he took his flute and he began to play. He played and he played and he played, and all the nightingales out on the trees outside began to sing with him. And then the mandarin's daughter slowly opened her eyes. She looked around. She saw all of her family there in front of her, and then she saw the face of Truong Chai.